So let's talk about what happened in this whole episode with me buying a house and then backing out. Basically, the house ended up being a lot more work than what I had anticipated. I mean, I knew it was going to be a lot of work. For me, I thought it was just going to be a fixer-upper, but it turned out to be more extensive than that. There were foundational issues and amongst other things. But what really put me over the edge and ultimately ended up in me having full-blown panic attacks, which I never experienced before like I did. I mean, I've had severe anxiety in the past. I think we all have under certain circumstances. I mean, just go through a divorce, you're going to know what anxiety is all about. But this was different. This was like full-blown panic attack. And how it began was after I had the home inspector come into the house and check everything out, and this is when all the red flags started popping up. But at this point, I was like sold on the property. I just wanted this beautiful vegetable garden, that I was ignoring those red flags. And I went ahead and committed myself to buying this house. And so the next step was to get a lawyer. I had got that set up. And then the next step was to call my insurance company and get insurance on the place. And that's when problems started to begin. My own insurance company didn't want to insure the house because of all the problems that were associated with it, and the fact that it wasn't going to be my primary address. So that basically the house for numerous days could be empty. I guess they didn't like that. I don't know what was the main reason for it. Also, there was a wood stove in the house as well. At that time, I wasn't sure if it was certified or not. So that, those are a number of the reasons why my insurance company wouldn't insure it. But that, at first, I thought, okay, this is just an obstacle. Let's call up some other insurance companies and let's get insurance on the property. And I found a couple of companies that would insure the property, but on condition that they would later do a home inspection themselves. And this would be, by that point, I would have already owned the property outright. And, they could decide to not want to continue insuring the property, or they would maybe increase the rate really high because of the condition the property was in. So, yeah, and I hadn't even yet got a survey on the actual land itself. And at this point, I'm starting to get anxious. I'm realizing that this is becoming far more problematic than what I first anticipated. And but I tried to put on a brave face in all of this, and thinking, yeah, you just sometimes good things don't come easy, and you got to persevere through all of these things and get over the obstacles. The typical motivational stuff that you tend to adhere to, like the heroic kind of image of overcoming all obstacles kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of mindset. I even did a video that I was intending on posting on YouTube on that kind of theme in my circumstance that I was in at that time. But when I played the video back, I did not feel convinced by myself on what I was saying. And I find that the things that really are of value in life require hard work and sacrifice. And then there's the payoff. And it's almost like an initiation. You've got to go through that, let's say, fire before you can get to the reward at the other end. There was an element of real doubt there. And so I... At that point, I started to mentally unwind, and all those red flags that I was ignoring were becoming ever so brighter. And I realized at that point, I'm in over my head, that, I'm not, the repairs that needed to be done in this place were, I needed an engineer to come in and assess the whole situation and what really needed to be done. And then I probably would have had to hire out professionals. I would have had to hire out professionals to fix all these problems. And so this is when things started unraveling for me. And the anxiety started rising inside. And then from just being an anxiety, a persistent anxiety, it suddenly became these full-blown panic attacks. And it would start off with, just a severe feeling of discomfort in your own skin, like you wanted to rip your skin apart and escape yourself. And then it would rise up to a point of, where you're fidgety. You just can't sit still. I'm tapping, my forehead or my chest or whatever. And I'm just like, I can't, I'm moving around, pacing back and forth in the apartment. And then it would get so extreme, I'd have to go out for a long walk or go out for a run. And that would help out a little bit. Things would subside. And then it would come back like a tsunami again. And the next time it was even worse. And the worst case was, there were on a number of occasions, I'm in public places and I literally felt like I was going to faint. I had this severe compression on my chest, my stomach was severely upset, and literally every muscle in my body just started shaking. I felt like I couldn't even support my own body when standing up, and I thought I was going to collapse. And that was just, I'm wondering at this point, what the hell is going on? I'm breaking down. And, and I'm trying to make sense of this, because really, okay, so what's the worst case scenario? I bought a piece of crap, let's deal with it, right? That's common sense stuff. It's not the end of the world. I mean, I could have put the house up for sale afterwards, or just not do all the work that I intended on doing it, just, and live with the place the way it is. Nothing would have, this was not something that was going to destroy me. And yet the experience of these panic attacks were like, this was the end. And so I had to figure out a way of coping with this, because it was persistent. It was going on. This went on for days. And so sort of midway through it, I reached a climatic point where I had a severe panic attack. And it was like where all the images of the house and all the problems that were associated with were just attacking my mind. And at that point, I thought, okay, and again, I can describe it like the tsunami just hitting you and just completely just overwhelming you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you can try to say, just snap out of it, kind of thing. You can't. And I understand now people who suffer from chronic panic attacks or anxiety attacks. I get where you're coming from. You have no control over it. And at that point, I stopped trying to have control over the situation. It was not controllable. I just said, okay, bring it on. This is it. Bring it on. Let's not hold back here. If we're going to have a panic attack, let's have a full-blown panic attack. And I just let it happen. I just let it all happen. All the terrifying images, I let it all just flow into my head, all the terrible feelings. And then, oddly enough, things started to subside, I noticed. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to start paying attention to these panic attacks and where do they begin and what triggers them. And so that's what I started doing. And I even decided to go with I had a rating system from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, full-blown panic attack. And I would notice that these would begin very mildly, actually. Like usually it would be like a trigger from something outside, or it'd be a sensation of this uneasiness that would begin in my stomach and work its way up, and then eventually it would just overwhelm my head. So there was two ways that these anxieties would build up and then become full-blown panic attacks. And so, yeah, the number 10 would be the point where I'm about to faint. A number, I guess, 5 would be where I'm at that point where I'm feeling like I want to rip out of my skin. And I guess a number 8 would be where I'm fidgety and I got to move around. And so now I was able to observe this though, and I also noticed that these attacks didn't last forever. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a drink of my wonderful green smoothie here. Green smoothies, you should have one every day. Yeah. So yeah, I was observing, and I noticed that they last between 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes at the most, and then they would subside and you'd be in this calm place. But you knew at a certain point they would come back again. But it helped me to understand how the whole process worked and to take that kind of third person approach to it, watching what was going on inside of me. It didn't change my situation, it didn't make it any better, but I was able to follow it. Another thing that came out of this was it was like something cracked open inside of me. It was like an existential breakdown where I started examining my own life. And it began where I started feeling very empathetic towards people in my past who I remember going through struggles themselves, and me standing on the outside thought that they were overreacting, that they just needed to snap out of it and deal with their situation, and realizing at that point that I was rather insensitive. It was like I felt their pain for the first time. And then there was another level where I started looking at my spiritual life. And so it became a time of soul searching. And so, that is probably the most beautiful thing that came out of all of that, was this breakdown that I had. And that led me to this deep self-examination that still has a profound impact on me right now. It changed something inside of me. And again, my situation hadn't changed, but this is where I was at that point. I was still in pain, still having deep anxieties and having panic attacks, but now I'm at the place where I'm able to follow those anxiety and panic attacks through, understand what is going on, knowing that they're not going to kill me, that they will subside again, but the problem itself needed to be dealt with. And so I was down to the point where I either have to get out of this situation or accept what I've gotten myself into and live with it. So either adapt or escape. That was basically my only two choices. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'll talk to a good friend of mine and get his input. And, he liked my vision of what I want with my little piece of land, my vegetable garden and all that. He was actually quite excited about all of that. But when I got into the details of the property and everything like that, he more or less, in a very polite way, said, you know what, you probably should get out. And what was at stake here? I had to break the contract that I had with the seller. There was already a $5,000 deposit on that contract that was at risk of being lost. And not to mention, the seller could decide he doesn't want to agree to breaking the contract and hold me to it. So that evening, I talked to my sister as well, who has actual experience with real estate. She's had income property in the past, and she owns an old Victorian house herself. So, and she's done a number of renovations herself. So she kind of knows what it's all about. And she's also a very level-headed person, not easily taken into any kind of scam or anything like that. So I told her the situation I was in, and it didn't take her 2 minutes to say, get out. Even if it means losing your $5,000, get out. And so at that point, it was decided I decided that's it. I'll take the loss. I'll get out. And that's what I did. To make a long story short, I took a hit, but fortunately the seller was willing to let me out of the contract. It cost me $5,000, and that's it. And once it was clear that the contract was null and void, broken, the panic, the anxiety all went away. And so, you know, after that, of course, I felt a little bit depressed about what happened, a little bit unsure of myself that it even happened to begin with, that I wasn't able to cope. But there was also the whole process of self-examination, which I felt to be of extreme value. I mean, it's unfortunate there couldn't have been another way of doing that, but maybe sometimes that's what it takes, is that you need to be in that place where you're completely just broken down. Your ego there's no place for your ego at that point. And you're looking at your raw self. So I won't be posting this video. This is a personal video. I just need to talk. I have nobody to talk to. Nobody that I want to drag into this. This is my own personal pain. And I don't understand it. It's quite shocking what I'm experiencing right now. And it has to do with the house that I bought. That's what happened, this severe panic attack. And yeah, I really do feel for those out there who have chronic panic or anxiety, where they can't even, I mean, for me, what was causing the anxiety was very specific, but there are many people out there who have these anxiety attacks, and there's nothing specific that they can pinpoint it. Anything can trigger it off. And so, yeah, that's it. Cheers. Have a good day.